Marvin Devine. I'm saying bye to all the lies and all the times you cried, saying that I wasn't right, yet I was right by your side. You manipulator, playing games, your friends commentators, and I don't know what you say about our private conversations, but it's got them hating. Thanks to all the rumors you be claiming. It's cool, I'm done with you, so they can throw you a celebration. You gon' hate it when you see me with somebody living better. I'm trying to tell you that me just doing me gon' have you jealous.
Hello, folks. Welcome back to the program. This is Chris, live in Central Pennsylvania for a special broadcast today with AfriForum's Ernst von Sale, also known to many folks as Conscious Caracal. But before we get to that, I just want to read the following to you. As demonstrated by this report, which we're about to discuss, the human rights situation in South Africa, especially regarding minority rights, has continued to deteriorate in 2025. The South African government's racially discriminatory policies are increasing in number and severity. Private property rights are increasingly under attack. Incitement of violence and hatred against minority groups from powerful politicians is escalating. Critics of the government are subject to intimidation, investigation, and minority heritage and education are being targeted, attacked, and marginalized. It has become imperative that all countries, organizations, and institutions that stand for human rights, in particular minority rights, take a firm stand against the South African government for its discriminatory policies, attacks on private property rights, and for the hateful, violent rhetoric against minorities that is flourishing under its watch. Incitement of violence that the president refuses to condemn. Of course, we're talking with the president of South Africa. That would be none other than Cyril Ramaphosa. And with that, folks, let me welcome my guest in tonight. It's Ernst von Sale, the Conscious Caracal, whose program I was on last week. Ernst, it's no longer Goeiedag, it's Goeienaand. I think it's late afternoon there.
You're correct, Chris. Yes, you're getting the exclusive first video interview after the publication of this report this morning at AfriForum HQ.
Yeah, the report came out this morning, and it's a phrase we've unfortunately said far too many times, and I've used the hashtag the World Must Know Report 2025. Is this another iteration of a previous report because you put 2025 on there?
Right. So AfriForum has a tradition of bringing out or publishing the World Must Know reports. The first one was published in 2020. The second one was published in 2022, and this one now in 2025. And each of these reports looks at a particular period of time and documents all the ways in which minority rights were attacked or minorities were targeted during that time. This newest report, the World Must Know 2025, looks at simply the year 2025. The previous two reports are also still available online. They cover different periods. The 2020 report covers everything from 1994 till 2020. The 2022 report covers the years between 2020 and the end of 2022. And in 2025, just so much happened that we could write an entire report just based on 1 year. So that's what we did.
Well, Ernst, I have to say that if you've been one of my students when I taught postgraduates, I'm probably very, very grateful because, there we go, got that green screen. I'm seeing lots of sourcing here throughout this report of actual locations where the original material comes from, the primary sources and secondary sources you reference here. I have to say that would tend to lend credibility to a research effort here. Before you respond to that, is this coincidental that this report comes out the week of the G20 summit or just good happenstance?
Right. So, no, it's. I wish I could say that we've been planning this for so long that it coincides with G20, but this is a thing that this type of report was already planned at the beginning of the year to come out, not based on the G20 dates, but based on the fact that we hadn't done such a report for the past 3 years. So it's high time to do one. And also within other context that it was planned was the context of denialism from the South African government. As you know, in 2025, a lot of the issues highlighted in this report, whether those be expropriation without compensation, the threat to private property rights, kill the Boer, the hateful chant, farm murders, etc. A lot of these issues have been at the forefront of a lot of people's minds in 2025, a bright spotlight being shone on these issues by President Donald Trump and Elon Musk and others as well. And the response from the South African government and the ANC has been outright denying that many of these issues exist. So AfriForum's cheeky response to that denial is to say, well, here's all the receipts. You can deny all you want. Here's cold, hard reality. And scream, as you pointed out there, every claim in that report is referenced and sourced in regards to where that claim or that reality comes from and where it was reported. So the shrieking about misinformation is also not going to stick unless the people that are challenging AfriForum want to take on the primary sources that we cite, which I mean are pretty solid in this report's case. When you're under such a microscope, Chris, you have to ensure that all of your sourcing is spot on and watertight and bulletproof. Because if there's one little mistake, one little chink in your armor, then your critics are going to exploit that absolutely.
Well, I looked at it, or checked some of the sources, but not all of them, because it's quite likely the sources you used for the report. And I have to say that unlike many in the media in South Africa, when they do give links and URLs, oftentimes they link to op-ed pieces, which are not primary or secondary sources, but just opinions, or they link to their own false reporting previously as if that's a legitimate source of the data. Here you actually have got genuine sources from what I can see of the ones I've checked, so I think people appreciate that. It also
sometimes the government itself is the source.
Well, yeah, and of course the government is a source of disinformation, as we know. Whether it's your government or my government, it isn't always telling the truth, because the government doesn't always act in the interest of citizens, but it does always act in the interest of the government.
Right, but when a politician, where the other side of that coin is when, whether that be a deputy president, Paul Mashatile or Ramaphosa, says something like praising Zimbabwe, or that the ANC supports expropriation without compensation, and you link and the source for that claim in the report is the president's speech published on a government website, then they're going to have a tough time claiming that disinformation there.
Well, in fact, you quote Ramaphosa here a couple of times. Of course, he went to the White House famously on the 21st of May and said that there is no expropriation. We're not taking land. We have no intention to take land. I mean, those are almost verbatim quotes of what Ramaphosa said in the Oval Office. But here in this report, I see that you've cited the dear president a couple of times in which he said that that's exactly what our goal is. We intend to take land. That's our plan. He also cited the ANC manifesto rally of 2023 and many other ANC officials saying, of course, Paul Mashatile saying that, hey, it's nil compensation. Get over yourself, basically.
Yeah. And it's quite shocking, Chris, what we've witnessed in 2025. The two different versions of reality that many are trying to sell to us. On the one side, you have government officials, senior government officials like the president and the deputy president saying expropriation without compensation is coming. We are dedicated to bring you expropriation without compensation. And we're very proud of all these racially discriminatory laws that we have. And then on the other side, they say, no, there's absolutely no evidence that we have any intention of expropriating property without compensation. We value private property rights. And no, to quote the South African government verbatim from their X account from last week, there are no racially discriminatory policies in South Africa, end quote. And it's in the face of that blatant type of denialism where a report like this is necessary to actually provide the evidence on in regards to the counter. And the response to this type of report has been very predictable. As I predicted earlier this morning, the responses are not going to be addressing the contents of the report. They're going to be shouting misinformation. They're going to be just making derogatory comments about Afrikaners and other minorities. But if I can condense it all into one or two sentences, the response to AfriForum's report from its critics, the pro-discrimination South Africans, has been simply, shut up, shut up, shut up, to quote a former police minister of police that very famously said that.
I think the point you're trying to make there, Ernst van Zyl, is you're not a garden boy.
Yeah, that clip will live in infamy. I think it's burned into the memories of so many people for how funny it is, and maybe even a little bit how sad it is to see a police minister in a country with such a big crime problem behave himself like that.
Well, not just that. It's a pretty clear and obvious admission, whether he meant it or not, that he has a serious inferiority complex, saying that to a member of civil society, who's now also a member of parliament, but and a shadow minister. Right. Yeah, I know it's pretty sad. So this report is quite detailed. You talk about 145 race-based laws, and you also compare it to the period of governance from when the Union of South Africa was formed in 1910. Until the end of apartheid, and when there were apparently 324 race-based laws. Most of those acts were passed after 1948, though, were they not?
I don't have the exact number that were passed after 1948, but from my knowledge, speaking under correction, you're absolutely correct there. I do have to give full credit there for the fact that we actually know how many race laws we have in 2025 and since 1910 is all thanks to the brilliant researcher Martin van Staden, who is currently with the Free Market Foundation. He did the painstaking work of actually going into the archives, into the details of how many race laws have actually passed in the history of South Africa since 1910, and how many have passed through Parliament since 1994. And the shocking or surprising thing is, Chris, nobody before Martin, nobody had really done that. We had a handful of people guessing, some people claiming this and that, but Martin gave us the definitive number of how many race-based laws South Africa has at the moment. And it's been invaluable work because now you can actually put a number to the claim if you are claiming that South Africa is one of the most race-regulated countries in the world. Well, if you're going to make that claim, when someone's naturally going to ask you, well, how many race-based regulations are there? And thanks to Martin van Staden's work, we actually know that there are over 145. And that database is available on the Institute of Race Relations Race Law Index. So you can literally just Google Race Law Index and you will find it. And it's all documented there. And that's been invaluable work. So that's the source that we use there in the report.
Well, Ernst, I'm going to have to call out fake news on your part because I have to say that I haven't seen any banners or billboards or posters claiming this is the most race-regulated country in the world. Have you?
Yeah, I know the government's just doing such a good job sweeping that under the rug. The thing that you're referencing there, Chris, that first banner that the government took down, well, Solidarity won their court case today. They settled with the local government there that they were wrong to take down the banner. But it's when it comes to particularly that claim, I mean, you're going to have to show me another country with 145 race-based laws. If you're going to, and then the claim only shifts from South Africa being, if you can give me another example, then that the claim only shifts from South Africa being the most race-regulated country in the world to the second most race-regulated country in the world. So when it comes to particularly what we're seeing, the reaction from the South African government has been one of just blatant attempts at censorship, but they're stuck in the Cold War in the sense that they still think that censorship or silencing the truth can be done by tearing down billboards and trying to intimidate your opponents very bluntly out in the open with high treason investigations. But they clearly, if you're still stuck in the Cold War, you don't know about the Streisand effect. And for those who don't know what the Streisand effect is, there's a little bit of homework for you. Just go Google Streisand effect and you'll go learn a valuable lesson about how trying to silence the truth goes horribly wrong.
Well, you know, your report talks about 145 race-based laws, and that, of course, includes things like the Equity and Employment Equity Act, which has just recently been amended to limit the number of white males in management positions at companies with over 50 employees to just 4%. Absolutely ludicrous sort of thing. Imagine if we limited the number of black males to 30%. People would lose their minds. It's absolutely insane. Doesn't make any sense. But the report goes far beyond that. I mean, you reach into other aspects of civil society, not just government, where this plays out in the corporate world, whether it's bursaries given to students, only Africans and Indians and coloreds apply. Of course, we know that Indians and coloreds probably won't get it. It's going to go mostly to the black applicants, not to those. That's just window dressing to pretend that people who are brown are also black under the ANC's designation. But beyond that, I mean, I remember a couple of years ago when I reported on this extensively when the Vodacom netball semifinal, a team won the game and then they had to forfeit. And of course, a lot of people would assume, well, it's because there weren't enough black players on the court. But in fact, there weren't enough white players on the court. And it just shows you how ludicrous this nonsense is when they had to forfeit a game that they won fair and square because there was an injured white player and they didn't have enough white players on the team because they're regulated. They can only have so many white players. And one of them got injured, so they couldn't put enough white players on the court, 2 at a time, in order to be valid team. So a black player went in for a couple minutes while that player was being treated. And at the end of the game was taken away from them. Now, this is a sport that's popular in Australia, in the UK, and women actually make a living from this. They make money playing professional netball. Most Americans never heard of it. So going to the final, which is where this team was headed, they no longer went, and they lost an opportunity to show their stuff in front of scouts and get contracts and make money. This is morally bankrupt. It's really sick. And you mentioned, or it's mentioned in a report that you did here, you also talk about a cricket team kicked out of a tournament because of this.
Yeah, that happened earlier this year. The Warriors were kicked out of a cricket tournament, a professional cricket team, because they didn't meet these strict race quotas of the government. And then they weren't just kicked out of the tournament. To add insult to injury, they were fined 500,000 rand for not meeting these race criteria. And Chris, that's the thing. A lot of these people screaming misinformation, saying they, quote unquote, there's no race laws in South Africa. They've clearly never had to explain to their child that they didn't get into the team because they've got the wrong skin color. They've clearly never applied for a job, been told you are the best candidate, but you are not the right race. That's a reality for many thousands, hundreds of thousands of South Africans, a reality that they have faced, and a reality that's very crudely racist in the sense that you are banning people, as many companies have done, from employment and from promotion based on their skin color. We saw that one of the other major racism scandals of 2025 was Bidvest, who they created a school bursary program for the poorest employees of Bidvest, not even just like everyone, the poorest employees, and everyone could qualify except white children. White children were excluded. Now, if you're going to make that argument that, oh, this is all about redress, making right what was wrong in the past, how does discriminating against small primary school children, excluding them based on their race, right anything? How does excluding poor white children from a school bursary help anyone in any way, except simply creating a new generation of disadvantaged people based on their skin color? It's wrong. Human rights abuses in the past can never be fixed by human rights abuses in the present. You just are creating a new cycle of abuse. It's just going to continue and continue. And the biggest irony of it all is it's being done under the banner of non-racialism. Oh, this is all to create a non-racial society. Well, no, you're racializing South Africa with every single one of these new race laws that you introduce. That's what the ANC is doing. It's a race-mad party that's pushing race-mad policies, and then they can't understand why people are fixated on race in every facet of society, because from the top down, the message is race is the most important thing in life, and everything in society needs to be determined based on race. Well, then you're going to create a race-mad society.
Well, it's no different than the logic that's put behind the whole red herring, the canard of white genocide, something pushed and perpetrated by South African politicians in the media and U.S. And we see Donnie O'Sullivan with CNN's Hatchet Job documentary that came out this Sunday and pushing the narrative of white genocide, trying to lay it on Trump. Trump has answered questions from the media about it, and that's how he talked about it. I think only once or twice he actually brought the term up. But he's talking about racial persecution, which now cleverly some of the politicians in South Africa are trying to equate as if they're synonymous. White genocide, Afrikaner persecution. And Trump's not even saying Afrikaner persecution, he's saying racial. But the point here is that it's, look, the thing about these laws and these policies at this point aren't about balancing the scales. This is an effort by people who are probably allied with what we call the radical economic transformation. This is about racial revenge. This is about getting whitey. This isn't about balancing any scales. There's no way anyone can even justify this at this point. The system has failed for 30 years. It's gotten progressively worse. Haha, I use the term progressively there. And it is about getting even with white folks by some politicians. That's the bottom line. Look at the responses to everything that happens. I mean, the murder of Henny Muller in Uppington this week, an 82-year-old man, 7 a.m., they broke in his apartment in a populated part of Uppington. By the way, I was 100 meters from Henny's house just a few months ago, visiting someone there, and murdered in broad daylight. And then they come in, and the guy stabs him multiple times in the chest, murders him, then stabs his wife, and then sets the house on fire and leaves. Didn't steal anything. That's not about balancing scales. That's racial revenge, and it plays out in politics.
And the other thing, Chris, is when you look at the results of decades of these race-based policies from the ANC, it's not even as if they can make the argument, well, they might be morally dubious because they're discriminatory, but they're uplifting black people, so that's worth the the moral dubiousness. No, they're not uplifting or empowering Black people, and they're morally bankrupt. That it's a double whammy. They're not a good thing in any way, except if you're a politically connected cadre, then they're a fantastic thing. Then they are empowering your wallet to a astronomical degree. But when it comes to particularly what's their effect, I mean, the South African, the Free Market Foundation and the Solidarity Research Institute did a study this year to quantify the damage done by these race-based laws, and they found and calculated that these race-based laws over the decades have destroyed 4 million jobs, and they've destroyed about 5 trillion rand of economic growth. And that's only scratching the surface. They wrote a very detailed report going into the methodology and how they got to those numbers, and you can find that on their website, either on the Free Market Foundation or the Solidarity's website. But it's not even, to get back to the point, it's not even as if these policies are producing, as if the ends justify the racist means. No, it's racist means with destructive ends. It's not producing anything positive. And that's what makes it even worse, is that you still see a handful of fringe people, particularly those within orbit of the government or those who have some vested interest in these policies, defending them. But it's people completely divorced from reality.
Indeed, it is. And in fact, not only is it not uplifting people, it's pushing more people into poverty. Under the National Party, around 10 million Black South Africans lived in abject poverty. Today, over 30 million Black South Africans lived in abject poverty. It's absolutely ridiculous. This has not uplifted anybody. It's simply created, as you mentioned, and I've said many, many times, a cohort of rich, connected patronage puppies who make a living off this, and they're among the most staunch defenders of this corrupt system. But, it's also, it goes beyond this, too. And I know that, but this wasn't a report, but something that typically should be mentioned here is that it's also in civil society with these so-called watchdog groups that are responsible for overseeing things like the South African Human Rights Commission, which is very selective in its umbrage and its outrage, losing its mind over a 14-year-old video from Ronaldo Ghoz, yet Nota Baloye gets to read apologies that they wrote for him, and he adds one word to it and laughs about it when he goes on air, and that's the only punishment he got. They tried to bankrupt Ronaldo and had him pushed out of parliament because of that video, which wasn't even germane to today, and it also wasn't him saying what they said. But the bottom line here is Nota Baloye just keeps it up. He called white women genetically inferior and white people dogs that had to be kept on a leash and so many other insulting things. And he's not alone. This comes all the time. Just this week, Nota Baloye walked into a restaurant and used the unbeliever word from Arabic, begins with a K, of course, and you get in trouble in South Africa saying it, but he used it over and over again in public, in front of people, and said it to Black people. Has there been any complaint filed about him with the South African Human Rights Commission? I seriously doubt it. What I'm getting at here is double standards in South African civil society.
Well, Chris, if a lot of these quote-unquote human rights watchdogs and the ANC itself didn't have double standards, they wouldn't have any standards at all. So you're absolutely right. And I mean, that's the reason why, that's one of the other reasons why a report like this is necessary, to highlight the double standards that are playing out in South Africa. But particularly, if any other racial group that is not one of the targeted minority groups were to be targeted with these types of policies, rhetoric, incitement of violence, it would become an international scandal. It would be elevated to a massive scandal internationally, and you'd have all these different organizations jumping in saying that this is the worst thing ever. You see this particularly play out in regards to farm murders. So on average, there's about 50 farm murders every year based on AfriForum statistics. But if you were to switch out those 50 farm murders with any other profession, just in your mind's eye, you can see the reaction already. Let's switch out if it wasn't 50 farmers that were being murdered, but 50 journalists. Do you think the government and many of its lackeys would be calling it just normal crime? This is just the part and parcel of living in South Africa? No. You would have international organizations and even governments intervening and saying this is an absolute atrocity. The fact that these journalists are being murdered in South Africa, there needs to be action immediately. But because it's farmers, for some reason, their lives are worth less. For some reason, then it's just normal crime. And the same goes for incitement of violence, like kill the boer, kill the farmer. If you had that type of incitement of violence against doctors in this country, against accountants in this country, against politicians in this country, to put a finer point on it, if there was a chance being done by some radical, let's say, right-wing group or whatever, or even left-wing group about murdering ANC politicians, and they're doing it in stadiums filled with thousands of people, there would be a government crackdown on that group and the individuals doing that chant. But when that chant is about murdering farmers, when that chant is about murdering minorities and Afrikaners and Boers specifically, and the white minority specifically, then for some reason, it's just a song, it's just a chant, it has nothing to do with killing people, get over it. And the double standard is just so clearly in view. As I said, with many of these issues, if you swap out the target with another target, another type of target that's not politically correct, about inciting violence against or about discriminating against, then you see the hypocrisy play out in your mind's eye.
Well, to be fair, Ernst, the African National Congress, or the international community didn't respond, but the African National Congress did respond when many African National Congress local councillors were assassinated, rubbed out in KwaZulu-Natal. They created something called the Political Killings Task Team, only to disband it when it turned out that senior officials were connected to mafia, to the murderers. And so now that's been disbanded. We have a whole scandal going on. But I'm being a little facetious here, but when their interests were threatened, they did come up with a recourse, only to disband it when the criminals' interests were threatened.
Well, Chris, what you're mentioning there, I haven't thought about it in that way, but it raises a very disturbing question. I mean, AfriForum has been, and many other groups have been demanding that farm murders be added to the priority crime list. And I mean, again, just to clarify for those who don't understand, that doesn't mean that it becomes the priority crime of the police. It just means that it is characterized as a unique crime that deserves a unique counter strategy, a unique investigative unit, etc. But Chris, what you're mentioning there, that the previous special unit investigating political assassinations uncovered some unsavory facts about who was behind it. Maybe that's one of the reasons that the ANC does not want to launch a special investigative unit into farm murders, fearing about what it might uncover about who's behind it. That's just the thought that came to my mind immediately when you made that point.
Well, along those lines, there's definitely something going on here with criminal syndicates when it comes to farm attacks. Mm-hmm. There is a clear effort to distract, to obfuscate, to give excuses and whataboutism. And a perfect case of this, and I have evidence of it, is the murder of my friend's father-in-law on a farm in Brits back in May or June of this year, which was reported by the police. And I have the police report as a house robbery. But in fact, we know that a couple nights before the attack, they came and they killed their dog, so they had no early warning. They stole the next night, or I got the nights reversed, they stole the front and rear wheel off their bakkie so they couldn't escape. I mean, what do you do? Who's going to steal two wheels? You know, if you're going to steal, you'll steal all four, you'll steal one because you need one. But you steal one from the front left and the back right, rear, you know, so it can't move at all. So they kill the dogs, no early warning. They block their way out. This is an elderly couple. They're on an isolated spot near Brits on a farm. And then they tied them up and tortured them for 9 hours late at night and beat this man severely. He was just had a hip operation and was in a wheelchair, and then left them to die. They took a couple items like a TV and a cell phone, and then the police called it a house robbery. But that was trespassing, that was a home invasion, that was breaking and entering, that was assault with intent to kill, that was attempted murder, and eventually it was murder, but not reported that way. And this goes back to how crime statistics are lied about in South Africa. We know for 3 years, over a decade ago, that they simply stopped reporting crime statistics. And in fact, the crime statistics for children-related crimes and women isn't even released for this year. It's 3 months behind schedule now. They have a habit of doing this, and it makes people wonder if they're cooking the numbers. But certainly when it comes to farm murders, they are cooking the numbers. When you report a murder, it's simply a robbery.
And Chris, the other thing that I think is important to emphasize is the fact that I had got this question actually from a journalist this morning at the media conference where we published this report. The journalist asked me, why does your report focus on these issues affecting minority groups and rather than focusing on the issues that affect all South Africans? And then my response was, I asked her, can you name me an example of an issue that affects all South Africans, like corruption, crime, unemployment, that is denied by senior government officials? The existence of is denied, and you can't. Farm murders has been denied the existence of by the president of South Africa. In 2018, Ramaphosa famously was talking to Bloomberg in New York, and he said, and I quote, "There's no murdering of farmers or white farmers in South Africa. There are no land grabs in South Africa," end quote. He's never retracted that comment. He's never apologized for that comment. News 24 actually wrote a puff piece very hastily in response to that comment, titled, "What the President Actually Meant," not fact-checking the president's blatant lies, explaining away his blatant lie. That's not what a journalist does. That's what a PR company does. But that aside, another example of the denialism is with the race laws. I mean, the South African government's official X account last week went on this rant where it was just replying to everyone. After the Solidarity's banner had been removed, people were posting that banner saying South Africa is welcome to the most race-regulated country in the world, under every post by the South African government to kind of give them a little bit of the finger because they were trying to censor this information. Well, then the South African government started doing something very bizarre. They started replying to everyone saying, like, please refrain, in their words, very robotic, please refrain from spreading misinformation. There's no race laws in South Africa. That's an official government account saying that. So it's the denialism of these issues existing, not even the argument these issues aren't as serious as people claim they are, just straight up saying these issues don't exist. So when people say, why are you giving these issues shining a light on these specific issues in your report and not issues that everyone is being affected by? Well, many of the issues in this report do affect everyone, like the threat to private property rights, the threat to farmers and to people that produce the food of this country, the fact that these race laws are destructive to the economy and to investment in this country. They do affect everyone. But on the other side as well, these are issues that are being openly denied by the government on a regular basis, which means that they need extra attention to fight that denialism. I think it's so clear.
Well, 100%. It's exactly the case. I mean, the ignorance, the arrogance of media actually ask a stupid question like, why are you only focusing on minorities? Because these farm attacks affect all South Africans. Why are you only focusing on this and the other? All these issues affect virtually all South Africans. The fact that you narrowed in on one particular group that are especially being targeted or victims of these things makes it pretty obvious. I mean, the fact that you squelch entrepreneurialism by denying people opportunities, denying companies tenders with the government when it's half the economy, you've basically cut people out of half the economy just to start with, and then you force them to do other things. But there's a question in the chat here I want to address here very quickly. One of the people said, so why did they disband the commandos? The bottom line with why the ANC disbanded the commandos is because they're idiots and they misunderstood the role of the commandos because of their propaganda. They saw the commandos as a threat to their existence, and therefore they moved very quickly within the first decade to remove the commandos. And the irony is that the most recent regiments, I think it was 4 regiments that were created, were all in KwaZulu-Natal, and they were entirely black. And this is a reserve unit. And so the commandos, those commando units were the only form of formal employment for the people in those commandos by and large. But this is just the position of the ANC. They live in a world that's passed by decades ago. And the commandos served a very useful function in rural security with coordinated search operations, for drug interdiction, and also for protecting rural security of farm attacks, even though they weren't full-time. But the disappearance of them emboldened criminal syndicates who know that people are far away from police stations. The police can't respond. People are isolated. They're easy to attack and take care of, and that's what they do. But I want to, after I've answered that, I want to go back to your report here, Anson. I want to read something from it. This is a very telling statement. This is by the president of the country rejoicing in the fact that people are suffering misery. Let me read this comment because I remember when it happened and I was like, did he actually say that? He did actually say that. On a couple pages in your report, it says, where's that here? It says, in July of 2025, President Ramaphosa celebrated the fact that the gap in household income between race groups had shrunk. Well, that's nothing wrong, right? I mean, people were uplifted, except that's not what happened. It had shrunk primarily due to a decline in white and Indian household income. So he was excited and thrilled. He got a little tingle down his leg that white and Indian households have become poor. Not that black households haven't become wealthier, because they haven't, except for that coterie of caters and the patronage puppies. But basically, he's excited that the misery is shared now.
Yeah. I mean, and that's the sick ideology that drives the ANC constantly, is that it's not equality of everyone being equally prosperous. It is equality even if it means everyone is equally poor. And the ANC has proven that they can't make everyone equally rich, so they will settle for everyone being equally poor. And it's not because they value just equality as in essence. It's because they don't really care. They will not feel the effects of that poverty. I mean, they've created a country where half of the population is dependent on some form of government grant, and they celebrate that fact. Whenever the amount of South Africans that are dependent on a government grant goes up, the ANC publishes very celebratory posts on social media and celebrates it in their speeches, because they know that this makes more people dependent on the ANC, and they can then, when elections come around, they can threaten those people and say, if you don't vote for us, we can literally make you die, because we can shut down your access to resources that you need to survive. It's a very sick cycle, Chris, but that's exactly what they're doing. Is they want, it's by design. It's not a glitch in the system. It's not a bug in the system. It is part of the system. That's how it's been designed by the ANC. Make as many people dependent on government handouts and government's welfare to ensure that every election you can hold a metaphorical gun to their head by saying, if you don't vote for the ANC, this tap is going to run dry and we can close it, and then you and your family are going to suffer, even die. And they celebrate it openly.
Well, in fact, you make a very valid point there from my point of view. I agree with that, because for a long time, people made the argument that the reason that many black South Africans, poor black South Africans, vote for the ANC is because the ANC gives them grants. But the ANC doesn't give them grants. The taxpayer gives them grants through Parliament, approved and voted on by the national, or not by the National Party, by the ANC. Well, it is a national party. They merged with the National Party. So, what's that?
I understand the confusion. They sometimes look completely identical.
Well, they do. These are two socialist leftist parties that enjoyed state ownership and control of things. And it goes on from there. State-owned parastatals, yada, yada, yada. And also silencing speech. The National Party was all in favor of that with the banning process. And the ANC seems to like to do that in different fashion. But the thing about this is that I lost my train of thought there. We had a break there. I lost
the welfare system. People making the argument that
right, gotcha.
So for the ANC based on welfare.
Gotcha. So for that, the argument there is that people making a long time that people vote for the ANC because they give them grants, but they don't give them grants. The DA votes for these grants. The ACTP votes for grants. Freedom Front Plus votes for them. Every party votes in favor of the grants. So it's nonsense. But you make a valid point in that the ANC has the power, at least until this last election, even now they can still get the help with others, that they can pull that away. But right now they couldn't do it. I mean, there's no way that the ANC could vote to suspend grants and anybody would support them. And with 40% of the vote, they couldn't pass it. But people don't understand that.
Average person doesn't understand that nuance. Yeah, they just see it as the ANC has its hands on the levers of power, and they can pull the lever to end the welfare whenever they want. That's how the average person understands it.
Right, even though that's not the truth on the ground. And that's unfortunate. That's because people don't understand their own system of governance. And it's not a surprising result when the standards for people going through matric to be approved to go on to university, whether they go or not, is 30% in 3 subjects and 40% in your first language. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous. I mean,
no, that's a glitch in the system or flaw in the system that's also intentional by design. The dysfunctional education system is not a glitch. It's not a mistake. It's also a key ingredient in regards to the system that we've been describing now. Is when you are creating a system where you want your electorate to believe that you can turn off the welfare if they don't vote for you. Well, you need an electorate that has gone through a dysfunctional education system to believe that simplistic argument. Well, there you go. What has the South African education system in South Africa looked like for the past few decades under the ANC? Dysfunctional, to quote a previous Minister of Education.
Well, if you're talking about Minister 30% Answer Much Shaken, now the Minister of No Defense, I think you know who you're talking about there. So let's...
No, Chris, it's all by design. It's not a mistake.
No, it is by design. You dumb down the electorate, you silence speech, and then you say what you want to say. It's like I'm watching 1984 and Animal Farm play out every day in South Africa.
The silver lining here, Chris, is that we have the internet. We have the ability to actually get a lot of the truth about these issues out there. And the ANC are luckily still stuck in that Cold War mentality where they think they can just smother the truth by tearing down a few banners and making some populist speeches. But something else that's also important, I think, a distinction that needs to be highlighted is the fact that people sometimes ask, well, why does AfriForum keep winning and the ANC keep losing? Well, the difference between the two organizations is that the ANC lays awake at night thinking about new ways or ways in which they can cover up the truth, and AfriForum lays awake at night thinking about new effective ways to bring the truth to light. And that gives AfriForum an inherent advantage, because, I mean, I'd rather have the truth on my side than constantly having to lie and just thinking of new creative ways of disinformation, which is the ANC's constant existence.
Well, I think it's a fair point, but I think I have a fair point too if I make the claim that I think that what keeps the ANC up at night is ways that they can find to insult President Trump in America and lie about negotiating trade deals. I think that's what keeps them up at night.
Yeah, well, I'm sure they can walk and chew gum at the same time, so I think they can do both.
You're very optimistic. I don't think they're capable of both those things at the same time, but that's just me. So let's talk about something here that does affect all South Africans, and it's something I've highlighted for people for years because they all get fixated on land. Yes, land is property, but it's not the only property. Retirement accounts, stocks, bonds, Krugerrands, Buckies, apartments, houses, clothing, these things are property. And Section 25 of the South African...
that you're watching this episode on is your property.
That's right. It's my intellectual property. Exactly. It could be expropriated, my intellectual property. So Section 25 of the South African Constitution expressly forbids the expropriation of property with just and equitable compensation and an agreement between the two parties, those who have to be expropriated and the government taking it. Of course, the South African government made itself, in my view, ineligible for the Africa Growth and Opportunity Act as early as 2018, when a bill was introduced to amend the Constitution, which was defeated because the EFF thought it didn't go far enough, and so they voted against it. They wanted the state to control land, which means they want politicians to own the land, not the people. So that was defeated. But in my view, the moment that was introduced in Parliament, South Africa is no longer eligible because a key tenet of the African Growth and Opportunity Act was respect for private property rights, which is an international norm. And when countries don't respect private property rights, countries fall apart. We've seen it time and again. So that made them ineligible. But then eventually this became the law in December of last year. But of course, Ramaphosa famously signed this at Davos to big fanfare to make a big show of it. But he did so more than 30 days after the law had been promulgated, which violated the Constitution because he must notify the Parliament so that they have 30 days in order to, if they want, refute it. A lot of people don't know that only 1/3 of members of Parliament need vote in favor of this going to the Constitutional Court. It goes to Constitutional Court and they review it, and it can be declared unconstitutional with just 1/3 of Parliament. But he avoided that cleverly by violating the law, and that is what sparked this dispute. The latest brouhaha between the United States and South Africa was that expropriation without compensation, the abrogation of private property rights. But what I want to say here, Ernst, is that isn't for white people. That isn't for brown people. That isn't for black people. That's for all South Africans. Because if you think they're coming just for the Afrikaner Boers farm today, maybe. But tomorrow, they're coming for you, folks. They're coming for you. And they're coming. If you speak out against the government with this kind of law where the national government, the provincial government, or the municipal government under a mayor can come and take your property and claim it's in the public interest to give you nothing, this is Wakanda. This is Cloud Cuckoo Land. This is the Chinese Cultural Revolution. This is the Soviet Union. This is what's going on here. And it affects all South Africans. Yes?
Right. Yeah, and the other thing, Chris, and we highlight this in the report, just to quickly give people an idea if they didn't know, you can find this report at www.theworldmustknow.co.za. But something else is, we don't, again, the sources that we use is the ANC and the South African government's own rhetoric, their own promises. I mean, for example, they've said on countless occasions, previous Minister of Justice Ronald Lamola said this, and then Deputy President Paul Mashatile said that we tried to make expropriation without compensation possible through the amendment of the Constitution. That failed, so therefore we brought forth the Expropriation Act to make it possible. That's their words. They say, as you said now, Chris, but they spell it out. You don't even have to speculate. You don't have to go stand in. You don't even have to go stand in front of one of those boards with the red lint or the red tape and then make all the little connections. No, they spell it out for you. This is why we push the Expropriation Act. And then the most recent admission was from Paul Mashatile, Deputy President of South Africa, who said in a parliamentary Q&A, the ANC remains committed to expropriation without compensation. But when AfriForum says the ANC remains committed to expropriation without compensation, we're called misinformation peddlers, we're called propagandists, we're called treasonous. But when the ANC says we want to expropriate property without compensation, then it's fine. Then nobody reports on it. It's just the ANC's normal. It's a day ending in Y for the ANC. But when AfriForum or Solidarity dare say the same thing, then it's how dare you make that type of claim? Where's your source that the ANC wants expropriation without compensation? Well, my source is the ANC. It's almost like when Peter de Tooy of News 24 went on CakeNet and asked, where does this source of this graph that Twitter boss posted, where did this graph come from?
News 24.
This graph is disinformation. There's no source. And then, oh, wait, the source is News 24. They just posted it so long ago they forgot about it, and now they are eating themselves.
It's just hilarious. At some point, you just have to take people at the word for who they are when they say they're someone. So let me read those quotes very quickly from your report, folks. This is in the report, and this is about private property rights. In December of 2021, after the attempt to amend the Constitution had failed, then Minister of Justice, Ronald Lamola, now Foreign Minister, and Durko, stated, changing the Constitution was just one instrument we could have used. The matter is now ended, the amendment. We will now use our simple majority to pass laws that will allow for expropriation of the compensation. Now, this guy is the justice minister, and he's just argued about making unconstitutional law. I mean, how the hell? I mean, this is insane. This is insane. And then the Paul Mashatile comment is from 2024. And he said, this is answering questions of Parliament, if I remember correctly. He said, it may well be that you have issues with the wording thereof, but the intention is to achieve exactly that we need to expropriate land without compensation where applicable. We use the words in the act that we should expropriate land if it's in the public interest. The issue of nil compensation, I'll look at it, but my sense is nil compensation is that you don't pay. So, I mean, when Ramaphosa lies to President Trump in the White House and says that we're not going to do this, but he signed this law in January, but it was actually in December, who are we to believe? AfriForum? Or me or the ANC? Well, I'm going to believe the ANC because they told me this.
Yeah. When someone, metaphorically, if someone breaks into your house, Chris, and they say, Chris Wyatt, I want to rob everything you have, are you going to believe the robber that's telling you he wants everything you have? Or are you going to say, that's just propaganda. What are you talking about?
Nah, he just came for a bribe, man. Don't worry about it.
Yeah. No, I mean, this is what the government is doing with the Expropriation Act is they are a criminal with a loaded gun in their hand saying, I'm going to take your property. And AfriForum and Chris Wyatt, everyone else sounding the alarm is doing is saying, that guy has a gun and he's saying, I want to take your property. And then everyone making excuses for the ANC is like, what are you talking about? He's just there's no threat. He hasn't shot anyone yet. That's the argument that's happening.
Well,
but
it's no different than the argument. It's no different than the argument that I'm making when it comes to refugees, because people are saying that South Africans aren't refugees. Are we supposed to wait till they're murdered? And they say, oh, you're right. You should have been a refugee. It's like gays in Syria. If you're homosexual in Syria, that's frowned upon. And they drop gay people off roofs to their death. So if those people want refugee status in country and we grant it because they're a member of a group that's persecuted, and we say, well, we have to wait until something happens. Well, you're dead now. I guess you were right. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah. And I mean, that's I see the latest piece of propaganda from the South African government is, well, they've used this line a while, but they're going back to it now almost like old reliable. They're saying, but most of the countries in the world have expropriation acts just like this one. Chris, can I ask you, can the American government come take your house and give you nothing for it?
No, that's a lie. Ronald Lamola tried this nonsense, and of course, I refuted it. And after I refuted it, it sort of disappeared. It's proof that the ANC does watch my program. So I know you reprobates are listening, so listen to me very carefully here. You can take property in America through eminent domain, but you cannot take it without compensation. There's no possibility of that. Even the government, who needs it for military necessity or national security, cannot take your property without compensating you fairly. Now, has that law been abused? Yes, it has. Has it been used wisely? It was used very wisely in the 19th century to expropriate land to build railroads. that are straight. Instead of building routes that run like this, they're inefficient. They expropriated land and the rights, and then the railways still have those rights, which actually been used by telecoms companies because it's easy for them to install fiber along straight lines like that. But that's an example of a good use of eminent domain. But bad uses is in Connecticut, in Bridgeport, Connecticut. People who lived in homes for not them, obviously, but their ancestors or people before them, for 150, 200 years, these old historic homes along the ocean front. The city of Bridgeport decided they wanted to build a casino strip, bring all these people in, get some money up here because their economy was failing. So they used eminent domain, and the courts upheld it. Immoral, bankrupt. Now, they were compensated, but their homes were taken. But it has to be in the public interest, just like South Africa's. You can't simply, we want this land, and that's what they did at Bridgeport. So that was an abuse, but they were compensated. And so you just can't take land. That's a lie. Most countries don't have the ability to do this. This is another 30% Ronald Lamola, who just called the President of the United States a white supremacist. The South African government on the same day says, we're negotiating with the Americans for a trade deal. Do you really think you get a trade deal when your foreign minister calls him a white supremacist? What's that?
They're inches away from a deal. I keep reading every week. They're so close to a deal.
Well, they might be inches away, but they just moved back about 3 kilometers after that, putting his foot in his mouth. And Donnie O'Sullivan set him up perfectly, and that wasn't even his intent. Donnie O'Sullivan wants to throw shade on Trump, but that's what he thought he did. But what he actually did is expose Ronald Lamola for who he is. When you say we should listen to what the ANC says and believe what they say, well, we now have 2 senior ANC officials calling America racist and Donald Trump white supremacist. That would be Ibrahim Rasool, the PNG ambassador, and now Ronald Lamola saying it clearly. There's no equivocation. Answer the question directly. Just like when Trump was asked a question, do you believe when Annika Larson tried to set him up and Trump didn't fall for it? Now that President Ramaphosa is here, Mr. President, do you still believe that there's a white genocide in South Africa? To which Donald Trump said, I'm not convinced of that. But that's never played in South African media. So believe them for what they say. I believe what Trump said. He wasn't convinced of it. Anyway, let's move on to something before we wrap up here. I want to cover, but it's not just these laws that affect all South Africans. There are also things that very directly affect Afrikaners, Boers, and white South Africans in general, particularly Afrikaners. And what I'm talking about is the assault on heritage and language. Stellenbosch University, the land was granted into perpetuity on the basis that the language into perpetuity would be, the medium instruction would be Afrikaans. Well, that's been violated. And Afrikaans-speaking students are marginalized and ostracized at that school, the home of Afrikaans, essentially. It's sickening. On top of that, we've had Delarey's gravesite desecrated. What did Delarey do? Koos Delarey didn't do anything to black folks. Koos Delarey fought for his country, which was fighting against the Brits and the English. So it goes on. And you mentioned in the report the Paul Kruger statue, which was vandalized. And I've been to that statue right there in the heart of Pretoria. Tell us a little bit about the attacks on cultural heritage.
Yeah, so I think that's only in the past year that many of these key statues and monuments have been attacked. And some of the critics might make the argument, oh, well, it's just a coincidence, or all the monuments are being vandalized in South Africa. Let me really sketch the scenario or the context in which the Paul Kruger statue was attacked, the statue collection. Those who have been there, it's a Paul Kruger statue in the middle, and then there's statues around it. And once I've sketched the context within which it was attacked, you're going to maybe think twice about saying, oh, it's just coincidence. So firstly, it happens 1 week after the EFF in Parliament calls for the destruction of Afrikaner monuments and statues, such as, and they name it directly, the Paul Kruger statue in Pretoria. It comes just over a week after the EFF calls for the renaming of the Kruger National Park. It happens in the week of Heritage Month or Heritage Day, when South Africans are celebrating their heritage and their culture. And the day when the story breaks that the Kruger statue has been attacked and vandalized, the EFF national spokesperson immediately goes to social media and celebrates it, in his words, as great news. You're going to tell me that that's just normal vandalization? It's just some vandals that decided this incredibly politically poignant moment is the perfect opportunity to go make a quick buck. No, it doesn't seem to me like that. It doesn't seem to be at all to be a coincidence. All of these different moving parts and planets and stars perfectly aligning. It shows to a deliberate targeting of Afrikaner heritage in that moment. And then you see this with all these other statues as well, like General Delarey. if this was a widespread phenomenon, I mean, South Africa is filled with ANC politician statues to different struggle heroes. When's the last time that a Mandela statue had its hand or its foot chopped off? When's the last time that a Oliver Tambo statue had its head chopped off? Never. So this is not just it affects all different heritages in South Africa. No, it's particularly targeted against not just Afrikaner heritage, but any heritage celebrating or connected to the white minority in South Africa, and is very clearly so.
So if you go to the Eastern Cape, schools are almost 100% black. If you go to KZN, much of KZN schools are 100% black. At Brockenfell a few years ago, I know this is outside the scope of the 2025 report, but I'm sure it was reported on previously. At Brockenfell a few years ago, back in 2020, I think it was, maybe it was 2020, I think it was 2020, yeah. Back in 2020, there was a brouhaha there because EFF tried to make a lot of noise about it was a racist school because there were no black teachers or no black students. First off, that's a lie. There are black students there who are there on bursaries. But it's in an area in Brockenfell that's overwhelmingly populated by whites and coloreds. Therefore, the majority of the students were whites and coloreds, and the teachers, who probably don't want to drive 4 hours to teach every day, live near the school. And since they live in the community and they got hired there, the odds are they're going to be mostly white in color, which was the case. But they tried to make this statement about this, and they just made themselves look ridiculous and stupid. But the outcome of this was we actually got a conviction against the convicted criminal, Julius Malema, because of this. So, I mean, let's not forget Brockenfell. That is the man who sits on the Judicial Service Commission deciding who judges are, is a convicted criminal because of Brockenfell and his actions threatening the life of Dante van Wyk.
Yeah, and then specifically also the illegal firing of a firearm, another conviction that now makes Julius Malema a convicted criminal in him firing an illegal firearm in a crowded area. And now we're going to see what his sentence is going to be next year. And,
well, let me interrupt for just a second because I got to clarify something. So 2 convictions, there's a word for that. We have a name for that. That's called a serial offender.
Yeah. Right, but also there's that firearms case as well was after AfriForum laid a criminal complaint. But it's there's something else that's particularly important there, and that's the fact that this is the politician chanting "kill the Boer, kill the farmer, shoot to kill," and he's just been convicted of firing a firearm in public illegally. And the funny thing is, I was there during the previous "Kill the Boer" court case in the Equality Court. And in that court case, the argument was made, oh, well, this is all just a metaphor. I would not, Julius Malema made the argument that if this was literal, I would fire a literal gun on stage. Well, now it's just been proven that you did. So it kind of proves now that kill the Boer is literal, right, Julius?
No, 100%. I mean, it's really sad here. I mean, the thing is that you could get away with this double speak and lies 30 years ago, before the advent of the internet and around the world instantaneous communications, when people didn't have mobile phones in their pockets and WhatsApp and BBM, BlackBerry Messenger before that and so on. But you can't get away with this now. And you could try to shut down the net, but with space-based communications like Starlink, you can't even pull that off now. Although today we had a major glitch. Apparently a gateway was down somewhere, one of the nodes that affected a lot of stuff. Twitter was down earlier. I couldn't access it, and I couldn't do any searches there. And apparently a lot of sites in South Africa were down because the node was down. But you can impede the internet. You can disrupt it. But, it reminds me of the movie Firefly. They did the movie based on the show Firefly, and they called it Serenity. It was a movie, and they've got this guy who's Mr. Communication. He's on a satellite, or a station somewhere, and it's all the communication. He says the signal will get out. Basically the signal always gets out, and that's the signal's getting out. The problem is that not enough people are listening to it.
Yeah, but the fact that it's getting out is already a silver lining, and I mean, it's very encouraging that the critical response to the report of AfriForum's report so far has just been a lot of noise without any substance, a lot of sound and fury signifying nothing. There's just been I keep challenging a lot of the critics, show me or quote one quote unquote lie from the report and then prove that it is a lie. And then they all just say, no, I'm not going to do that. I can't do that. Or no, I'm not going to do that. The whole report's a lie. Well, okay, well, if this whole report, this 5,000 word report is all lies, giving me one sentence as an example that's a lie is the easiest thing in the world. but they can't do that. So every time when I ask them, provide me with one example of a lie and proof that it's a lie, and they say, no, I'm not going to do that, then I just say, well, no further questions, Your Honor.
Well, the problem with your report is not a problem. It's in fact, it's that this conclusion is the only subjective part of the report. This is the only place where you expressed opinion and views and analyzed. The rest of the multi-page report is factual statements of what officials said, what laws were passed, the events that occurred, and it's all sourced. So they can sit there. But I mean, this is just, again, I feel like I'm an Animal Farm. You know, it's like some pigs are, more important than other pigs, and people should just shut up and be quiet. It's like 1984. It's, I need to go back and watch V again, not because I think Natalie Portman's hot, but because I love the verbal vichyssoise that V comes up with, because the oppression, it's you can deny, but it's there for the world to see, if only the world wants to see it.
To quote Julius Malema from a old Twitter post of his where he said, quote, deny, play the race card if you have to. That's their whole strategy admitted to. But Chris, if anyone in your audience wants to go read this full report, it's up, available for free at www.theworldmustknow.co.za. I know there's a link in the description as well. You've been very kind to put it there too. And it's there for everyone. It's not an academic report in the sense that it's dense and you're not going to be able to get through it. It's not like a forest that you have to cut through with a machete. It's very clear and concise and point by point. And you don't have to read it in one sitting. It's pretty much we wanted to create a source for those who are fighting the good fight, trying to get the truth out about South Africa. If you want to know what's happening in South Africa regarding minority rights and how they're being violated, this report documents all of that, everything from kill the Boer to threats to private property rights, to threats against Afrikaans and heritage, and violence, incitement of violence from politicians, everything, and racially discriminatory laws, everything is documented here. So you don't have to go dig to find this information if you're in a debate with someone or you want to reference and find a source. Everything that you will need to win this debate is in this report, and we will be turning it into a video series as well on our YouTube channel for those who prefer video over reading. But this report is open for the public to go read and download and share, and we do appreciate everyone that shares it. It does really help.
So it's not behind a paywall. That's good. I mean, my content's not behind a paywall either. But CNN's documentary Misinformation, White Genocide is behind a paywall. Which the comments on it are turned. Sorry?
News 24's fact checks are also behind a paywall, and I always then ask the question: who seems to care more about the truth as opposed to profit? AfriForum, who spends thousands on creating a documentary, but who releases it for free? Who spends thousands on creating reports like this, but releases it for free? Or News 24, who does the quote-unquote fact-checking, but then puts it behind a paywall? I think the answer is pretty clear. Who prioritizes truth over profit?
Indeed. So, Ernst, as you said, the report's available. The link is below the video. People want to go read it. And it's the most recent one you did. So was there a reason there wasn't one done between 22 and 25? I mean, were folks just busy with all the court cases?
It's usually if we can find someone with capacity to help do it, or then we do it as regularly as possible. And in 2025, we actually budgeted the time and resources to be able to bring out another report. So I wish we could bring one out every month. But unfortunately, we do have a resource and time constraints. So we do it as often as we can. So this is the latest one. And I also just want to add, anyone watching in the audience, you can use the content of this report as you want. If you want to make videos about it, if you want to use the content to write your own articles or to inform your own content that you're creating, you can use it however you want. The goal of this report is to inform people. So it's not in any way you have to ask permission to run it on a video or to use it in something that you're creating. It's there for the public to use however you want. Just give AfriForum credit if you're doing that. That would be very much appreciated. But that's pretty much it.
Well, Ernst, I did want to correct one thing from earlier you said, which is inaccurate. I mean, I got to correct this. You mentioned the G20, I think, at the start of this conversation earlier. G20 Leaders Conference isn't really G20. Let's see. The United States is not going. Mexico's not going. Argentina's not going. Russia's not going. China's not going. Japan, I don't think is going. That last we heard, they're not going. And now I predicted that this might be the case, but I can't confirm yet. But earlier we heard that Italy isn't coming. So that makes it G13. So we'll see if that's true or not. It might still be 15, but whatever the case is, at least 25% of the leaders are missing.
Yeah, they're lucky number 13. It's turning into a right embarrassment for the ANC-led South African government. It's like even if it was just the United States not coming, Chris, it would be like the matric farewell without the head boy. I mean, that's a bit of a scandal.
Indeed. Well, Ernst, let me give you the final comment here about the report. Anything you want to say? The floor is yours.
My final comment would just be to thank everyone that's been sharing this whole year, 2025, that's been sharing the truth about South Africa, wherever you live and in whatever capacity you're doing it. You don't have to have a massive platform. Just talking about South Africa in an honest way, it does really make a huge difference. I think we often don't give enough credit to the anonymous people behind the scenes that have been informing people across the world about what's happening in South Africa. I think the Afrikaner and other minorities in South Africa, diaspora out there, have been doing that to a large extent because, I mean, if you've left South Africa, you've got a reason for it, and that reason is often not a very pleasant reason. There's usually some form of racial discrimination by the government, some form of violent crime trauma tied to it, or some other destructive policy linked back to the South African government. So I just want to thank everyone that's been doing what they can to get the truth out there. And hopefully this report can help you, empower you to do that more and to do that more effectively and to have the information in your toolkit to really bring it to the propagandists and the deniers out there that still claim that nothing bad is happening in South Africa.
Well, Ernst, thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it today. You have a lovely evening, and I'm going to let you drop off, and then I'll go ahead and wrap up this stream.
All right. Cheers, Chris. Thank you very much for the opportunity, and I'll chat to you again real soon.
All right, my pleasure. Folks, that's Ernst van Zyl, the Conscious Caracal, who's on joining us, the head of media public relations for AfriForum. So there you go. It's the update, the 2025 edition of the World Must Know report, and it's factual information. You can choose to read it, you can use it, you can choose to ignore it, but it doesn't change the reality that this is what actually happened. These are what these people actually said. These are the actions that actually occurred. It's well-sourced and researched. So it's probably even missing a few things. So there you go. See the last three important. Okay, Mad Max. Oh gosh, bless it. Where? You're not even here. Okay, I got to search for you. Okay. Yeah, I'm aware of that, Max, but that's they may have gotten that, but that's not a given what you're saying, what you've told me. I have information that may contradict what you said. Okay? And I have it from a different source. All right, guys, I hope that was interesting. Thank you very much. Awesome program. You're very welcome, Andre. It's my pleasure. And my thanks to my guest, Ernst van Zyl, Conscious Caracal. You guys have a lovely day. And I'll debate whether I do a news program or not. I might do one just to get everybody up to speed. So if so, it'll probably be about 30 minutes. All right? But I've been doing this for several hours. I've been up since doing broadcasts and interviews since 4 hours now. All right. Thanks, guys. Take care. Be sure to hit the subscribe button if you haven't hit already. All right. Thanks.